Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And today we're heading straight into the thick of it with Frankenstein, specifically chapter 22.
Oh, yeah. This is where things get really intense.
Yeah, you can practically feel the walls closing in on Victor Frankenstein just days before his wedding.
Mm.
And talk about a whirlwind of emotions. We're talking crushing guilt, paralyzing fear, and this constant tug-of-war between love and what feels like inevitable doom.
It's like Mary Shelley wanted to show us that the real monster isn't just out there roaming free, it's living inside Victor, too, you know?
Right. It's not just the physical exhaustion from chasing the creature, it's the weight of all those deaths. Just
Yeah.
William Justine Henry, it's all crashing down on him. He's convinced he's the true murderer.
And that's the truly terrifying part, isn't it? The silence Victor is absolutely petrified to share his secret. He's certain no one would believe him. They'd think he's lost his mind.
Yeah, can you imagine carrying that burden alone?
Yeah.
Knowing you've unleashed something so horrific on the world, it's no wonder he's falling apart.
Absolutely. And then there's that outburst he has with his father. He calls himself an assassin, but refuses to explain himself. It's like he desperately wants someone to understand, but the very nature of his secret makes it impossible.
It's heartbreaking. You can see it's creating sympathy, but the words just won't come out. So what does that do to a person? To be completely isolated with that level of guilt.
It destroys him slowly and methodically. And then we get this letter from Elizabeth, and it's just so beautiful and heartbreaking at the same
Oh,
time.
yeah, she's so worried about him. She can sense his distance, his torment, but she's also incredibly compassionate, even offering him a way out of their engagement. It really shows how deeply she cares.
Elizabeth is such a beacon of strength and understanding in this chapter. It's like she's the only light in Victor's increasingly dark world. But then
But then, the monster's shadow descends. He makes this bone-chilling promise to be present on Victor's wedding night. It's a stark reminder that danger is lurking just beneath the surface of their supposed happiness.
it's classic dramatic irony, wouldn't you say? We as readers are fully aware of the threat while these characters are desperately trying to hold on to a sense of normalcy.
And Victor's decision to go ahead with the wedding, despite the threat, it's almost like he's choosing to face his fate head-on, maybe even believing that postponing it would only put others in danger.
It's a decision born out of desperation, too. Right? He thinks he can somehow control the situation, protect his loved ones by sacrificing himself. You can practically feel the dread building with each passing moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Shelley does an incredible job of highlighting this contrast between the outward joy of the wedding preparations and Victor's internal turmoil. He's putting on this brave face for his father, but Elizabeth sees right through it.
Oh, definitely. There's this underlying anxiety in her, a sense of foreboding that mirrors Victor's own growing sense of doom. Then comes their journey to Evian, and initially it seems so idyllic, almost peaceful.
Yeah, the natural beauty, Elizabeth trying to lighten the mood.
Mm.
But as the sun starts to set and they disembark, there's a palpable shift.
That setting sun is more than just a visual detail. It's a symbol of impending darkness, foreshadowing the tragedy that's about to unfold. A reminder that even the most beautiful days can end in shadow.
It's such a powerful image.
Mm.
And as they step ashore, Victor talks about his cares and fears, clasping and clinging to him forever. It's like he's already resigned to his fate. But the question is it only his fate hanging in the balance?
Mm.
That's what makes this chapter so captivating.
It really leaves you on the edge of your seat, wondering what price will be paid for Victor's choices and whether anyone else will get caught in the crossfire. Talk about a rock and a hard place.
Right. You know danger is coming, but you feel powerless to stop it. It's like Shelley's tapping into this universal human struggle, this battle between hope and despair.
Absolutely. And it's all the more intense because we're seeing it through Victor's eyes. Remember, he's our narrator. But he's not exactly the most reliable one. His guilt and fear are so overwhelming that we have to question if he's seeing things clearly. That's such a good point. It adds this whole other layer of complexity. Are we getting a true picture of events, or is it all distorted by Victor's inner turmoil?
It makes you wonder if he's even capable of recognizing the real danger at this point. I mean, does the monster even need to physically harm Victor to destroy him? He's already a wreck.
That's a good question. But there's still this spark of defiance in him, right? This refusal to completely surrender. He may be tormented, but he's still clinging to some sense of control. He seems to believe that facing the monster head-on is the only way to protect the people he loves.
Right. It's like he's trying to impose some kind of order on this chaotic situation. You know, it's probably pointless. But, okay, back to the story. We left off with Victor and Elizabeth arriving in Evian, that setting sun, casting this ominous feeling over everything. What happens next? Does the monster strike right away?
Not immediately. There's this short pause. A fleeting moment of happiness. They're enjoying the boat ride, the scenery, Elizabeth trying to lift their spirits.
There's that line where she talks about how beautiful the day is, how serene and peaceful nature seems. It's almost cruel, isn't it? That juxtaposition of tranquility and the storm raging inside Victor.
It's such a brilliant use of contrast. It's like Shelley's highlighting this duality of nature, how it can be both beautiful and dangerous. Just like Victor himself embodies both creation and destruction.
And of course, that peaceful facade can't last forever. It's like holding your breath underwater. Eventually, you have to come up for air.
Exactly. As night falls, Victor's anxieties resurface. The monster's threat hangs heavy in the air, and as they reach their destination, Victor describes those cares and fears, clasping him, clinging to him forever. It's so vivid, you can practically feel the inevitability of it all.
I know. It reminds me of those Greek tragedies where the hero knows his doom is coming but can't escape. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion.
It's a perfect comparison. And just like those tragic heroes, Victor's blinded by his hubris, by this belief that he can control the forces he's unleashed.
And that blindness extends to his relationship with Elizabeth, wouldn't you say? He makes this cryptic comment about having a dreadful secret that would terrify her, but insists on waiting until after the wedding to reveal it.
Yeah, it's a decision that speaks volumes about who Victor is. On the one hand, he doesn't want to burden her with his guilt, shatter her innocence. But there's also this element of self-preservation, this fear of losing her love and support.
He's so trapped in his own head that he doesn't see how his silence might actually be putting Elizabeth in more danger. If she knew the truth, maybe she could protect herself, make different choices.
Exactly. It's a classic case of good intentions gone wrong.
Yeah.
By trying to shield her from the truth, he's ultimately leaving her vulnerable.
And it raises this bigger question. How much can we really protect the people we love? Can we ever truly shield them from the darkness in the world or even the darkness within ourselves?
That's a question that goes way beyond Frankenstein. It's something we all wrestle with, I think.
Definitely. So with that heavy question hanging over us, we've reached the edge of the cliff. The wedding night has arrived, the monster is waiting, and Victor's, well, he's resigned to his fate. But what about Elizabeth? What's in store for her?
That's the terrifying question that keeps us reading, urging us to turn the page and uncover the truth.
Okay, so we're back, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Victor and Elizabeth have just arrived at their wedding night destination, but we all know Victor's anything but ready to celebrate. I mean, he's convinced he's walking into a death trap, that this is it for him.
It's chilling, right? And what's even more disturbing is that Victor actually believes that his death will somehow protect Elizabeth, like he's offering himself as a sacrifice to appease the monster.
But that's the real tragedy of it all, isn't it? He's so consumed by guilt and fear that he's totally misjudged the threat. He thinks he can control the monster, predict its actions, when in reality, he has absolutely no clue what's going to happen.
He's playing a game he doesn't understand, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Remember that line we talked about earlier where Victor feels those cares and fears clinging to him forever as he steps ashore? It foreshadows not only his own fate, but the potential for something even more tragic.
It's like watching someone walk a tightrope blindfolded. You just know they're going to fall. It's just a matter of when. And that feeling of inevitability is what makes this chapter so powerful.
Absolutely. Shelley really knows how to build that sense of dread, that creeping awareness that something terrible is about to happen. And because we're so invested in these characters and their hopes and fears, it's almost too much to bear.
And yet we can't look away.
Yeah.
We have to keep reading. We have to see how it all plays out.
Yeah.
It's a real testament to Shelley's talent as a writer, her ability to tap into those primal fears and anxieties that are still relevant today.
And I think that's why Frankenstein continues to resonate with people even now. It's not just a scary story. It's a deep dive into human nature, into our capacity for both creation and destruction, love and loss, hope and despair.
It makes us ask those tough questions about responsibility, about the consequences of our actions, and how far we'd go for the people we love.
And what about Elizabeth? You know, she's often seen as the symbol of innocence, of love and compassion, but she's also a victim of Victor's pride. He fails to protect her, not just physically, but emotionally. He keeps the truth from her, and that takes away her power to choose and ultimately leads to her tragic fate.
And that's what makes this chapter so heartbreaking. It's not just about Victor's downfall. It's about the innocent people who get caught in the crossfire.
So even though chapter 22 leaves us hanging on this huge cliffhanger, it gives us so much to think about. It shows us the depth of Victor's despair, how fragile hope really is, and the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition.
It reminds us that even the best intentions can have terrible outcomes, that our choices have a ripple effect, and that those ripples can reach far beyond ourselves.
And it leaves us with this question: what would we do if we were in Victor's shoes? Would we be brave enough to face our demons? Or would we let the darkness win, destroying us and everyone we care about?
That's a question worth pondering, and it's one that every reader has to answer for themselves. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to pick up Frankenstein and go on this incredible journey for yourself. It's a story that will stay with you long after you finish the last page.
And as you read, pay attention to those subtle details, the foreshadowing, the symbolism that Shelley uses to make the story richer. Look for those hidden meanings and ask yourself what this timeless tale reveals about us as humans, about our hopes and fears, and about our capacity for both good and evil.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Frankenstein. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those pages turning.